putting migrants on barges and in disused military air bases?
Well, we'll look at the detail that we've just heard it this morning. I have to say I've heard this announcement several times before from the Conservatives, and one might be cynical and say, well, there's local elections coming up. They would say this, wouldn't they? I mean, our concern is they're not dealing with the fundamental problems. The fundamental problems is they're not processing applications quick enough. They haven't been doing that for several years now. That creates this problem of people in hotels. And if they did process more quick, if they did the real basics right, either people would be accepted as refugees and could start work and contributing to society and pay tax, or they would be deported. But by this holding position, by failing to do the basics right, the Conservatives are failing these people and they're failing the whole country.
While they try to sort that out, do you think that it's appropriate that the taxpayer is spending something like £7 million a day on hotels for migrants?
Well, if we can reduce that bill, ideally by doing the job properly in the first place, that would obviously be much more preferable. This is a sign of government failure. Let's be really clear about this. If the government had tackled this problem as they've been urged to a long time ago, we wouldn't be where we are now. We've argued not just for processing, getting the bureaucracy right, we've argued for safe and legal routes for years. The government beginning to talk about it, but if they'd done what we'd argued a few years ago, we wouldn't have the problem now.
We are being told that the overseas aid budget is being used to pay for migrants to be held in hotels, and that is something like £3.5 billion a year, a third of the overseas aid budget. What's your thought on that?
Again, this shows the costs of the Conservatives' failure. If the Conservatives had got to grips with this years ago, as we had been arguing, Liberal Democrats putting forward practical solutions, if they'd adopted our solutions, not only would we not have this problem with the hotels that we have now, we wouldn't be using the aid budget for something that it wasn't really meant for. I think there'd be a lot of your viewers and taxpayers who are pretty cross that people who really need help in developing countries, by the way, that might stop people wanting to come in the first place if we actually spent the money where it was supposed to do, solving the problem at root. People will be angry that the government are spending their money in the way that it wasn't originally intended to do.
Talk to me about the NHS. We've seen this survey. It's not good, it has to be said, for satisfaction levels on the NHS. But perhaps even more concerning is the cost of an NHS dentist is likely to rise by 8.5% next month. What impact do you think that will have on your constituents and the wider country?
Dreadful. I mean, my constituents have a real problem finding an NHS dentist in the first place. And when you look at that satisfaction, you said it wasn't good. It's absolutely appalling. I've never known the NHS in such a crisis in my time in public service. And, whether it's getting a GP appointment, whether it's access to NHS dentists, whether it's waiting times in A&E, cancer treatment waiting times, they've all gone in very bad direction. And the government seem totally out of touch, aren't getting a grip of this. And the reality is people are suffering. When I've been campaigning around the country, I was in Yorkshire the other week, I was in Surrey recently too, people are saying the NHS is the biggest issue and they're worried about their loved ones, they're worried about their families, they're worried that they're having to wait way too long for an ambulance, for example. And this is the reality. And the government seems to want to talk about everything else other than how they're going to sort our health service out. And what Liberal Democrats are saying at the local elections, in community after community, let's sort out our local health services, because that's what people want to see. And it's almost as if the government are living in another planet. They just aren't getting to grips with the real problems.
You're launching a new campaign today. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we've got the local elections in May.
Yeah, round the corner.
Yeah, last year, Liberal Democrats had a great result. We made more gains than any other political party from a set of local elections were England, Scotland and Wales. So we go into these local elections very positive. And we've got local candidates up and down the country knocking on people's doors, talking to them and wanting to serve their local communities as local champions. And the NHS is coming up big, as I've just described. So is the cost of living. People feel the government just haven't done enough to help them with their energy bills, for example. I think the other big issue is the environment. People have been shocked when we've discovered the government haven't been strict enough on the water companies who are pumping their filthy sewage into rivers up and down the country. We need to get tough on these water companies. Government needs to stop helping them out and needs to really set a real lead on this. So whether it's the NHS, whether it's cost of living, whether it's the environment, these are the issues that people need solutions for, and I think Liberal Democrats are providing them.
How do you feel about the new leader of the SNP a man you can do business with?
Well, I've never met him. I'm very keen to meet him at some stage. I've talked to my Scottish colleagues, Alex Cole-Hamilton, the Liberal Democrat leader in Scotland, and my Scottish Liberal Democrat MPs. We feel the real problem with Humza Yousaf and the SNP is they want to break up the family of the United Kingdom, and that they're so obsessed with independence, they're not focusing on the real issues that the Scottish people are facing, which, by the way, are very similar to the issues that English people face, whether it's the health service, which is in a mess in Scotland, and Humza Yousaf was actually in charge of that, and he's really failed on the NHS, whether it's the police service in Scotland, which is performing quite badly. He was the Justice Secretary and oversaw some of that. So he doesn't have a very good record of dealing with the issues that really matter to people. And whether in Scotland or England, we're seeing two governments that have been focused on their own sort of ideological nationalist agenda and not focused on the issues that matter to ordinary people. And what Liberal Democrats are going to do in this set of local elections as we campaign throughout the country, very positively, I have to say, we're going to show people that we have a lot of the same concerns that they have, and we want to tackle them.
Sir Ed, it's always great to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very
this
much.
morning. Thank you.